Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a quick look at divisions and curvatures of the vertebral column, as well as looking at typical vertebral structure. So let's go ahead and get started here with the curvatures. You can tell this is not my first try at recording this. Let me erase this real quick. So we have 7 cervical vertebrae, so let's label that in yellow. They're right here. There are first 7 vertebrae, C1 through C7. And they have something that is called a lordosis curvature to them. So I'm going to highlight lordosis in blue down here and show you what that means. It means that they're convex anteriorly. Below the cervical vertebrae, we have 12 thoracic vertebrae. And there they are, T1 through T12. And the thoracic vertebrae have a kyphotic curvature to them, a kyphosis, meaning that the convexity points posteriorly. And then I labeled kyphosis in purple. And then below the thoracic vertebrae, we have 5 lumbar vertebrae. These are our biggest vertebrae because they support the most weight. They're the lowest of the 3 regions. And then below the lumbar region, we have a bone called the sacrum. And it looks like one bone. You can pick it up as a single structure, but it is actually 5 fused sacral vertebrae. And it's right here, sacrum. And then below the sacrum, it's kind of cut off on my picture, sorry. We have 3 to 5 fused coccygeal vertebrae, which is called the coccyx. And then I forgot to add that the lumbar region is lordotic, just like the cervical region, and the sacrum is kyphotic, just like the thoracic region. So you can see how these curves are similar. If you kind of hunch your back, if you're sitting at your computer right now slouching, you can sort of envision this kyphotic curvature in your thoracic spine. But even still, you have to look forward with your head, so the cervical region has to be lordotic. And you can see that cervical and lumbar are lordotic, and thoracic and sacral are kyphotic. So that brings us to typical vertebral structure. This is just saying that most vertebrae have these structures in common. So most vertebrae have these here. And we're using T5 as an example of a typical vertebra. There's not really any such thing as a typical vertebra. They're all unique. However, this particular vertebra seems to have most of the stuff that most other vertebrae have. So we're going to look specifically at different vertebrae in other videos, but for now, we're just going to kind of label a typical vertebrae. So let's draw this little stick figure that I like to draw that sort of shows the basic structure of vertebrae. You have a vertebral body with 2 pedicles coming off of that vertebral body. And then you have 2 lamina that sort of complete this ring, which is the vertebral canal. And then you have a spinous process, a transverse process, and another transverse process. And that's sort of your basic vertebral structure right there. Spinous process, transverse, transverse. Okay, so let's label that on the actual sketch. So here's a vertebral body. Here's a vertebral body. Then we have pedicles. I'm going to draw the pedicles kind of differently. I'm going to try to draw a circle around the pedicle so that you guys can see that I'm talking about the whole pillar of bone. I'm not just talking about the side or the top. I'm talking about the whole thing there. Let's go ahead and label transverse processes. Now remember, this is a typical vertebrae, but even this vertebrae has some unique structures. For example, there's this little white circle right here. Hopefully you can see my cursor. And it's even more visible in the side view right here. I'm including that as a part of the transverse process, and it is, but in reality that actually has its own name, but we'll cover that when we get to thoracic vertebrae. Okay, let's draw the superior articular facets or processes. So vertebrae connect with one another, so they need to have processes where they connect. So here's the superior articular process. You can see it, not the best color choice. Hopefully you have more than 8 colors like I do in your crayon box. Anyway, so that's the superior articular process. And then we have an inferior articular process or facet. I'm just kind of drawing the side of it, so I'll draw an arrow to show you that's where it would be. Now, I wouldn't do what I'm about to do because it's not going to probably be as easy for you to erase as it is for me. But I will just quickly draw another thoracic vertebrae here. Okay, that's terrible. But you can see, so this is what I labeled in yellow down here. So this area right here, that's a bad arrow, but that is the same as this yellow facet and arrow down here. And you can see that the inferior articular facet of this vertebra articulates with the superior articular facet of this vertebra. So that's basically the two articular partners of a joint, those articular facets. So if you kind of side bend and pick something off the ground, that motion is occurring there, and it's also occurring between the vertebral bodies. And I did not label my inferior. My inferior articular process, so there it is in yellow. Now we'll draw the notches. So the superior vertebral notch on the thoracic vertebrae is not too dramatic. It's just this little notch right here. And I can draw it in the superior view too. Just be careful not to confuse this with the pedicle. The notch is just the top part. Okay, so there it is. Superior vertebral notch. And then we'll draw the inferior vertebral notch in purple. And again, it's not the bottom, it's not the pedicle, it's this notch that happens to touch the pedicle. So that's the inferior vertebral notch. Now, if I were to put another vertebrae down here below, again, probably not the best idea to do this because it will sort of mess up, that we'd have the superior articular process here, but then we'd have that superior articular superior vertebral notch as well, like that, right? Okay, this is bad, I'm sorry. So again, here's the joint between the two, but then there's this notch here. There's this little opening for a nerve to come out. That is called the intervertebral foramen. I'm going to try to erase. Oh, good. Okay. But you can see there that there is going to be, if we put two vertebrae together, these two notches turn into one little foramen for a nerve to come out. That's the intervertebral foramen. Let's go ahead and label the lamina in, I guess, green. So there are the lamina in green. Let's label the spinous process in purple, I guess. There it is. You can probably feel those on your back. Your thoracic spinous processes are particularly large and they slope downward. There it is. Vertebral canal we already labeled on our stick figure, but we can label it in the superior view as well. Vertebral canal for our spinal cord. And then the last structure here you actually can't see, but we can just sort of draw in a pretend one. In between every pair of vertebrae, we have this fibrocartilaginous vertebral disc. So I've just sort of drawn one in there. And guys, that's it for typical vertebral structure. We'll look at individual vertebrae in other videos, but this is just sort of your basic list of structures that most vertebrae have. So when you go to learn C5, you'll already know 80% of the structures on C5 because they're typical structures. And then all we have to do now is just add in the unique characteristics of each one, and that will make covering the spine go quite a bit quicker. So see you in another video. Thanks, guys.